Welcome to the Wealth Embodied podcast. I'm your host, Brianna Faringer, an attorney, spiritual guide, and wealth activator. I'm here to help you align your mindset for abundance and break through any glass ceilings with money. If you're ready to embrace your highest calling, manifest with more ease, and create a life that feels lighter and more aligned, then let's dive in. Hello, welcome to the Wealth Embodied podcast. I'm your host, Brianna. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am going to start off with asking a question around the theme of this podcast today, which is, what does it truly mean to you to be able to afford something? What does it mean to be able to afford something? This is such an important question because this does really shape the spending habits a person has, the mindsets that they have around money, and basically what they are prioritizing in their life. This question encompasses so many things, but it's such an important question. I would pose to you, number one, have you even thought about this? And if you haven't, then you are probably in one of two classes. Either you are so on top of your spending that you don't even need to ask this question, or you never ask this question and you are spending money unnecessarily and you may not have the amount of money that you want. So it's a really important question. If you're not asking yourself this every single time you're going to make a purchase, you should be. You should get in the habit of asking, can I truly afford this? And I mean this with everything, right? If this is a question or kind of something that is new to you, asking yourself questions around your spending and starting to develop some awareness around your habits and how you use money and what you prioritize in your life, what you prioritize money for, this should help you start to get more clear on what's really important, even on things that are necessities, right? So, I could talk about this topic for hours. I can already tell that this is the kind of thing I could just go into, but you should be asking yourself this question every single time you go to buy something, even when you're talking about paying a bill or paying for your rent or your mortgage. Excuse me, because if you are not evaluating in your life whether or not your necessities are true necessities, you are missing opportunities not only to build long-term wealth, but you're missing opportunities to, live the life you want in both the short term and the long term. So what do I mean by that? To be able to truly afford something, I do think it's an individual question. You have to look at your life and say, can I truly afford this? And what I want you to be able to do by the end of this podcast is have your own definition of what it means to be able to afford something. I mean, this word has its own meaning, which I will give the dictionary meaning in a moment, but I think it's important to understand what it does truly mean to be able to afford something and what it means to you in your life. Right? Just because you are paying, this is one of the things I want to really get to. Whether or not you can afford something, in my mind, is different from what a lot of people will determine for themselves it is. But in my mind, you cannot afford something if, number one, you're not able to pay your necessary expenses. But within that, you have to do an analysis and say, on the things that I consider necessities, which is typically housing, food, clothing to some extent. You don't need 100 shirts. You don't need 10 pairs of jeans, right? You don't need 25 pairs of shoes. And you may not need to live in the place you're living in, right? So when I'm talking about being able to afford something, are you looking at your necessities and saying, is this something that I really need to be spending my money on? And medications as well. Medications are a necessity, but by the way, you can save money on medications if you do a little bit of research, right? And look around to see all of the different places where you can buy medications. A lot of people don't realize that. And I've done that myself, right? I've actually significantly reduced my cost of medications that I need to take because I have done a little bit of research to realize that I could save money in some places. And so I'm really, this is an overall analysis of what you are spending your money on, not just on things that are beyond your needs, right? So I think a lot of times when people are like, can I afford this? They are thinking about this in terms of things that are wants, right? And so I think you have to get clear on, number one, what's a true need? What's a want? And when it comes to your wants, you know, just having money in the bank to be able to pay for something, or having a credit card for that matter, which is a whole other topic that, you know, I'll spend a little bit of time on it, but not a lot. I can also spend hours talking about credit cards and how I think they're a terrible thing for people to rely on, unless you are paying them off every month. In fact, if you can't pay off a credit card every single month, you shouldn't have one. Sorry, that's my personal belief. I'll just tell you that right out. Because it creates very bad spending habits for people. And people think, oh, I have money on my credit card, so I can afford this. No, you can't under any definition, right? So, but I want you to really think about this. When I'm saying something, can I afford this? What is truly the analysis that's going through your mind? And what are the things that are important in your life? And whether or not you can afford something is dependent on a lot of those things. So I'm pointing this out because, number one, just because somebody else can afford something doesn't mean you can, even if you're making the same amount of money and you live the kind of lifestyle. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's such an individual analysis. You have to be really looking inward. Number one, into yourself, inward. What are the thoughts that you have around spending? What are the negative habits you've developed around spending? And when you're saying to yourself, can I or can I not afford this? What's going through your mind? What are you basing that on? Because I can tell you, most people are telling themselves they can afford things that they cannot. And I'm going to tell you why. And that's somewhat based on my definition. But I want to just give you what the dictionary says the definition of afford is. It says, primarily means having sufficient money, time, or resources to buy, manage, or do something without serious consequences. I mean, when you think about that, a lot of people are gonna think they can afford something because they're not going to be able to come up with something that they believe is a serious consequence, right? So this is what the dictionary says this means. Just because that's what the dictionary says it means doesn't mean you have to use that definition, by the way, and that's why I'm talking about this. I want you to think about what being able to afford something means to you. So if I look at this, and I have a person in front of me that's like, okay, I want to buy this shirt at the mall. Can I do that without serious consequences? Probably. If it's a $50 shirt, yeah, what are the serious consequences of that, right? Probably nothing. But what I would tell you is, I think it just goes to, can you pay for this and still be able to meet your short-term and long-term goals when it comes to money? If the answer is no, then you cannot afford it. So, and I'm going to go into a couple, there's something that sparked this for me, and it's because there was this woman on social media. I say this all the time on here. I love the way other people talk about money on social media because I learn new things, number one, but number two is people will say things in a way that I hadn't considered something, or that that really resonates with me. This woman on there that comes up on my For You page a lot on TikTok, I don't know what her name is. I probably could find her if I went through my likes, but she said, every time you go to buy something, if you do not have the ability to put the same amount of money that the thing you're about to buy is, if you can't put that same amount of money into a savings account or retirement account, you can't afford it. And I tend to agree. I think that's a good way of looking at whether or not you can afford something. So just because you have $60 in your account today doesn't mean you should spend it on a $50 shirt. That is not a good economic decision. If you have to buy that shirt because it's part of a uniform for your job, or you don't have a lot of clothes and it's the only thing that you can wear that's presentable. Okay, maybe you actually need it. Most people do not need more clothes. We've got to get out of this mindset that you have to have a closet full of clothes. No, you do not. Rewear things. Keep things that have, that are good quality and that can last for a long time and that can withstand trends. And by the way, I don't get that caught up in trends. I used to more than I do now, but I refuse to spend money just because other people are trying to fit in with fashion trends. I don't care about that. I care that I have enough money to live the kind of life that I want. And for me, that means not working as hard. It means being able to spend my time doing things that bring me joy and not just constantly working and then spending my time on the weekends trying to get caught up from the constant working all week. And being able to slow down, relax, and go on vacations, having experiences. Those are the things that are important to me. And of course, my dog. My dog's the most important thing to me. But when I think about the things that are really important to me, I don't want to have to work that hard, right? I like working, but I don't want to have to work. There's a big difference, you guys. And if that's not in your mindset, you need to really start thinking about that, because that is going to be a direct consequence of what you are telling yourself you can and cannot afford now. If you're constantly buying things that you can't really afford, it's going to affect your long-term wealth, and it's going to affect whether or not you have to keep working. Just because you like working doesn't mean you should have to keep doing that because it's a necessity to pay your bills. There's a big difference. And this is everything that I try to help people with, in addition to mindset, is changing your habits, changing your behaviors that align with short-term and long-term priorities so you can live the kind of life you want now and in the future. If you're not planning in the future, you guys, do it now. Start. It doesn't matter how old you are. You're not too far along and you're not too young to do it. Start planning now. The more you plan, the sooner you start to plan for things for the future, the more money you're going to have and the more opportunities and choices you're going to have. I'm just telling you, you are not going to regret ever starting to plan for the future sooner rather than later. Whether or not you can afford things now is important to this. And, one thing I want to say about this, I'm really looking at this from this perspective of people saying, can I afford this? And being like, yes, I can afford this, right? Like, I'm going to buy this thing. If somebody really wants something, whether or not they can truly afford it is irrelevant, because they're going to find a way to justify being able to pay for it. So that's another mindset that may or may not come up for you here, right? This is like kind of aligns with all of the girl math stuff. It's like, I'm going to find a way to justify being able to buy this thing no matter what it takes. And they're funny, like the girl math things and like the memes and stuff, they are really funny, but they're also not, because I know that people are actually living their lives this way and trying to figure out ways that they can justify to themselves spending money on things that they can't afford and that they don't need. So, but I want to talk about affordability just because I've touched on this before. I'm talking about looking at this and trying to prevent yourself from spending money. But a lot of people will say, oh, I can't afford that, right? Like if there's something like really expensive or who knows what, they'll be like, I can't afford that. Please don't say that ever out loud, ever, or even to yourself. Start to say, I'm choosing not to spend my money on that, right? There's a difference. Saying I can't afford that means I don't have enough, and that is a scarcity mindset. Saying I'm choosing not to spend my money on that gives you the power and reminds you that you have the power to choose everything that's happening in your life, in large part. Stop placing this on, oh, I can't afford that. Oh, I can't do that. It's too expensive. No, it's just that you're choosing not to spend your money on it, period. That's it. You don't have to dig any deeper into it than that. But the more you say, I can't afford that, the more you are putting yourself into scarcity mode, and you're going to prevent yourself from building the kind of wealth that you want. Always, always, always. Always tell yourself, I'm choosing not to spend money on that. But when I'm talking about this topic, what does it mean to be able to afford something? I want you to look at things and start recognizing I have a choice on how I spend my money, and I am choosing not to spend money on things, number one, where they're not needed, And number two, where they don't align with my priorities. Affording something is about choice and priorities. It's not about math. And that's the thing. It's like, I think most people think they can afford something either if they have cash in the bank, cash in hand, or they have a credit card that has a credit limit on it. If you think that you can buy something just because your credit limit allows for it, stop, cancel your credit card, do not use it anymore until you can develop better habits around being able to spend. Having high interest credit cards is one of the worst economic decisions that you can make in your life. And if you say that you need it because you can't afford to pay for things, then you need to evaluate the things that you are paying for that you consider a necessity. Period. End of story. Stop telling yourself that you have to have a credit card to pay for the things that you can't afford. That is not a way to live your life. And is it okay to have a credit card in case of emergency? Sure, it is. However, a better thing to do is to have an emergency fund so that you don't have to rely on credit cards. Okay, so I'm talking about so many things, but that's why this is such an important question. Can I afford this? Can I truly afford this? Look at the things that you are using to spend money, what you're spending money on, because I'm going to just tell you more often than not, you cannot afford the things that you're buying. You cannot afford the lifestyle that you have. And I'm sorry if I'm like bursting your bubble here. There's going to be some people that this really triggers and it's going to upset people. That's fine. You know why? Because it may actually force people to start looking at, do I really need to do these things? Right? So, when people are talking about whether or not they can afford something and they're justifying ways to spend money, it's usually because they're focused on short-term comfort instead of their long-term visions. It comes from fear, scarcity, conditioning, trying to keep up with everyone around them. And this comes at such a huge cost. It's why it's such an important thing to do. I also tell you that the way I look at whether or not a person can afford something, and just so you know, I don't tell people what to spend their money on. What people spend their money on is their choice. It's not about judging what people spend their money on, you guys. Judging how other people use their money is only detrimental to you because it's a reflection of your own patterns and your own fears. I can observe the way that other people are spending money and say, I would not spend my money that way. Right? Because I see this all the time. People are spending money on things that I'm like, oh my God, I would never spend money on that. But look, it's their money. They can do whatever they want with it. But for me, if I'm looking at somebody, if somebody was coming to me and asking me to help them go through their expenses and their finances, and we were going through their priorities and long-term goals, I'm generally going to tell a person, number one, you should be able to meet your needs. Right? And do we need to look at how, like, within those things, are you spending a lot of money on places that you don't? Are you is your housing too expensive? Do you have a bunch of things that are expensive where maybe you could cut back a little bit? Maybe you don't need to do that if you've got plenty of money to pay for all of your needs, pay for your wants, and put money away for long term, right? If somebody's in that place, they can do whatever they want. But if somebody comes to me and says, I would love for you to help me figure out where I could cut back on things, maybe what I need to start doing so I could save in the long term, I would tell them this. Number one, you need to be able to pay your necessities, your housing, your utilities, medications, food, of course. Like for me, food and medications for my animal, those are necessities. Once I'm doing that, am I putting away in savings or retirement or in some sort of accounts that are earning money for the long term? Am I putting enough money away for my long-term goals? Beyond that, if I have extra money, I can do whatever I want with it. That to me is when you can afford something, right? If you can afford to pay all of your necessities and put money away into accounts that will help you meet, your long-term goals, whether they're tax advantaged accounts through your employer's 401ks, you may have an IRA, things like that, or brokerage accounts. If you are able to put money away, pay your necessities, whatever's left over, do whatever you want with. You don't have to ask the question, can I afford this? You can. But if you are paying your necessities and you are not able to put any money away, if you don't have an emergency savings account, if you have high interest credit card debt, if you don't have retirement accounts, you cannot afford to buy the things that you are buying. That doesn't mean that you have to cut everything out. What it does mean is you may need to make some changes. If you tell me that you're going to Starbucks every single day and buying coffee, I will tell you, you probably need to stop. Sorry. Stop telling yourself the story that you have to go to Starbucks every day. No, you do not. That's a story. It's costing you a lot of money. Now, if you have lots of leftover money after paying your necessities and putting money in savings and retirement, great. Go to Starbucks as many times as you want. You can do that. But if somebody is telling me that they're eating out a lot, they're going to Starbucks, they're buying clothes, they're, whatever the thing is, and they're not able to put money away and save, they don't have an emergency savings and they don't have any retirement, or they're not putting enough away for retirement, I'll tell you, you can't afford the things that you're buying, and you need to start making behavioral shifts that can allow you to align your spending with your values, your goals, your long-term financial plans, and you're willing to prioritize it. Buying a shirt now is not going to bring you long-term happiness. Buying more shoes, buying a car, buying designer handbags, buying expensive jewelry, eating out at expensive restaurants, that can bring you happiness in the short term, but is it going to bring you happiness in the long term? Do you really need to have more clothes? I mean, these are questions you should ask yourself. And it's not about being judgmental. It's not about being mean to yourself. It's not about telling yourself you can never spend money on things. It's about looking at every single time you're spending money. Does this align with my short-term and long-term goals? Do I really need this shirt? You guys, you would be shocked at the amount of things that I don't buy. Like, I do not spend my money on much outside of necessities, like health and wellness things, like gym classes, stuff like that, and putting my money into investments. I like to go on vacations. I'm willing to spend my money on that. I like massages. I've talked about that, I think, on here before. That to me is a non-negotiable. I'm willing to spend my money on that because I enjoy it. But I'm not spending money on any of those things to the detriment of my short-term or long-term goals. I don't have credit card debt. I use my credit card for everything, but I pay it off every month, right? So if you cannot do that, then you should not have a credit card. There's probably people that are going to tell you the opposite. My belief is you shouldn't even have access to a credit card if you can't pay it off every month. You should have it for emergency purposes only. You should not even be carrying it around with you. You should not be buying things with it. You don't need another shirt. You don't need another pair of shoes. You don't need another handbag. You don't need to go out and have wine with your girlfriends. And by the way, I'm not telling you to not have fun. I'm just telling you to think about what you spend money on, right? Like, I love getting together with friends, but more often than not, I meet people for walks because me and the people that I spend time with, we care more about spending time together and not spending a bunch of money. I love walking. I love being out in nature. I love being out in the sun with friends, and my friends like that too. I hang around people who are not needlessly spending money. It's one of the reasons I don't spend a lot of money, because my friends are not like, let's go out to dinner all the time. The last few times I've gone out to dinner or even to eat, it has been so expensive. I'm like, I'm almost not going to do this anymore. It's not worth it to me. I love being around friends, but I can have friends over at my house. We can get together and go hang out in the park and, have a picnic. It doesn't have to be at a fancy restaurant. Those are things that just do not bring me joy anymore. When I was younger, they used to, but it was because I thought that's what I was supposed to be doing, not because I truly enjoyed it, right? So really, really looking at, does this bring me long-term satisfaction? And is this thing worth it in the short time? Because having money right now doesn't mean you can spend it or you should spend it, right? And so I would pose these questions to you. Do I have the money right now? Just because you have the money doesn't mean you should buy things with it or you should use it for things. Versus this question, is this important enough for me to prioritize? Right? This is going to shift your mindset from one of reaction and impulse buying to intention. Anytime you go to buy something, if you go to the mall or you go somewhere and you're like, I want this thing, there's two ways you can look at this. Do I have the money right now? If you do, if you ask yourself that question, you're going to buy it if you have the money in your account, or even if you have money on a credit card, versus ask yourself this question: is this important enough for me to prioritize it over other things? Do I want this shirt so bad that I'm willing to sacrifice my retirement fund or my savings, my emergency savings, or the goals that I have for myself right now? Maybe it's you want to buy a house, or maybe you want to buy a car. I don't know. You have to really think about those things. And I'm not telling you not to live your life. You should. But there's ways to do it, right? Like, I make coffee at home every day because I actually like the coffee I make better than what I get at coffee shops. That's just me. I've never been a person who enjoyed going out and getting coffee anyway, because I want it very first thing in the morning when I wake up. So I'm going to make it at home. But I've gotten to the point where I make my coffee, like, I like it so much the way I make it at home, I don't want to buy it somewhere else. So if buying coffee is your thing and that's something that you're trying to reduce, can you say, okay, I'm going to allow myself to buy coffee 5 days a week instead of 7, and the other 2 days I'm going to start making it at home? And then can you start to get to the point where maybe you enjoy it at home more than you do going out? These are just mindset shifts, you guys. These are behavioral shifts. I'm not telling you not to enjoy things, not telling you not to spend money, but I'm telling you, if you start to ask yourself this question, am I willing to prioritize this spending money for this thing over other things in my life? I think it's going to change what you start to spend money on. And so, there might be a belief that you should spend your money on yourself for something, like, oh, I worked hard, I deserve this. Well, okay, that's fine. Maybe if you, want to set goals for yourself and say, like, oh, once a quarter, I'm going to let myself buy something for myself because I deserve it. Or if I can save the amount of money, in an emergency savings, I'll treat myself by buying myself something at the end. Those things are fine. Right? But just so you know, people who build long-term wealth, they don't spend money like that. They don't spend money just on everything that they see and want. People have this belief that millionaires are out spending all of this money on everything. Some of them are. A lot of them aren't. A lot of people became millionaires because they have really, really good habits with money, and they understand what it takes to build long-term wealth, and it doesn't involve buying money for things that don't matter, like clothes, shoes, purses, handbags, jewelry, fancy dinners, all of this stuff that I'm talking about, you guys. You can still do those things every now and again. Just be aware of, can you truly afford it? Because the way that I view affordability, most people can't afford most things that they're spending money on. And it's to their long-term detriment. That's why it bothers me so much, because I want people to live the kind of lives they want. I want to help people build long-term wealth. You can't do that if your spending habits on a day-to-day basis don't align with that. And so you have to think about where your money decisions are coming from. Are they coming from fear or from vision? Your vision, your mission in life. Are you building the future that you want? And here's some questions that I would ask. In addition to, I posed a lot of questions here, but does this align with the life I'm building? Every single time you make a purchase, yes, every single time, you guys. Every time you go to the gas pump, every time you're at the grocery store, every time you buy something online, every single time you pay for anything, say, does this align with the life I'm building? If the answer is no, then don't make the purchase. You can't just be impulse buying everything, because if you're just out buying whatever you want without thought, you're never going to be able to ask yourself these questions. You have to get into the mindset, I don't need this thing right now. Another question, will this move me forward or keep me where I am? Is this short-term pleasure or long-term investment? And am I saying yes for some other reason? Am I buying this thing because it's an emotional decision to something, whatever it is? You guys have to start digging into these things to start investigating your own beliefs, your mindsets, the emotional reactions that you're having to spending money. But when you're talking yourself into being able to buy things because you're saying, oh, I can afford it, I have money in my bank account, that doesn't mean you can afford it. You can only afford something, in my definition of it, you can really only be able to afford something if you can pay your needs and you can pay for all your necessities. You have money in an emergency savings that's sufficient to pay your bills for at least 3 to 6 months if something were to happen. And you are putting enough money away for long-term goals. That could be for your kids' college. It could be for your retirement. It could be for a lot of things. You need to be putting money in places that are going to grow and earn money for you so that you can build long-term wealth. If you think that you're going to work your way to long-term wealth, I'm going to tell you that you're not. You're going to burn out. The way that you're going to get long-term wealth is by investing your money or finding ways to use it so that it is growing. It's earning interest. It's compounding. You are not going to do it just by working yourself to death. Please don't do that. But just keep in mind, affordability is not about the number in your bank account. It's about choosing the life that you want to build. So when you go to buy something, the very next thing, even if it's a pack of gum at the convenience store, ask yourself these questions. Do I really need this? Does this align with my long-term goals? Because little choices like that, they add up, you guys. $5 decisions that you make over and over and over again can be to the detriment of thousands of dollars down the road if you had instead put that money into a retirement account or an investment account or in real estate or something. I'm just telling you that. So I know I'm like really hitting this spending stuff hard, but it's because to me, it's just such a priority to help people build the kind of lives that they want. You can't do that if you don't have good spending habits, and you can't do it if you're telling yourself that you can afford to buy every single thing that you come across, because more often than not, you can't. So I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you have a great day. Bye.
Hey, before you go, would you love to receive my 3-step masterclass to easily create and hold wealth for free? It's called Effortless Money, and it includes the exact framework to start attracting money effortlessly and manifesting abundance with more ease. If you want it for free, all you have to do is leave an honest review of the Wealth Embodied podcast, take a screenshot of this episode and put it in your Instagram stories and tag me at Brianna_Faringer, and we will send you the free Effortless Money Masterclass. This is how my clients have manifested a $13,000 check, a promotion resulting in a $30,000 salary increase, and significantly improved relationships. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time on the Wealth Embodied podcast.